Welcome back for another installment of Fellowship of the Rink. Episode 43 is brought to you by our incredible local friends in Waggle Golf, 9 Mile Brewing, and the officially unofficial craft beer of the Minnesota Wild. That's right, Barrel Theory Beer Company. With me, as always, Joe Smith of The Athletic, bringing you all your insider info on Minnesota Wild and Gopher Hockey. And Joe, you're able to scratch the itch a little bit. You finally got back into the rink after months of absence. How'd it feel?
I figured out how to get in there, which is great. But yeah, it was wild. Obviously, as people know listen to this podcast, I've been paternity leave for a while now, which has been great. And I literally admitted
not everyone knows, Joe. Like it's still like people are slowly kind of finding out. Like I got asked by 3 different people at the game. They're like, "Wait, is that Joe?" Like, yeah, yes, it is. They're like, "What happened? Like, is everything okay?" I'm like, "He's on paternity leave." They're like, "Oh," I'm like, "Did you like think he was dying or like what?"
Or
what
like,
do people think?
laid off. Like people on Twitter are like, "Oh, I thought where's your coverage coming?" Like, and it is hard because like Russo can't just explain everything to people, or like
Right.
I just like I don't want to pipe in every single tweet I get. Like, "Hey, where you been? Are you okay?" I'm like, and we don't tweet or don't post a lot of stuff of our kid on social media. I don't know how you guys are with that.
Yeah, I don't either.
But I just try to like keep it quiet. But yeah, it's a pretty long leave policy, which we're grateful for. But it's just it's been crazy to be 3 months pretty much away from it. And so Saturday I went to Gophers Michigan hockey game. So my first time at a game, probably since preseason Wild game, I think. Not that I haven't watched hockey since then, but just haven't been to the rink itself. So it was nice. It was cool, and it just also hit me like, okay, like we're getting back into it. This is going to be getting real soon, and I'll be leaving my son, and he's going to be back, and he'll be fine, everything. And obviously a very emotional, physical game, and 2 rivals who I know really well, and so it was a great way to get back into it. And before I start covering games, starting next week, so it'll be the week before Christmas.
Dang, it is a week away.
Get back into it. Yeah,
that's so weird. It feels like it's been like so far out this whole time, and now it's a week away.
Oh. Yeah, and daycare is a few weeks away, so it's everything like you think is like so far away is not. And as Russo told me, my first game I'll be covering is a 8:30 start local time. So the hockey gods were giving me a little thank you very much there.
So fun. Well, let's talk about that game, because like Friday night for the Gophers, it was kind of utter domination, 6-0 win, kind of went off running. And Saturday night was anything but that. In fact, they were kind of in the hole for the first half of the first period, like good 10 minutes. Michigan was kind of burying them. And then it turned into a far more physical affair than I had anticipated.
You knew Michigan would have a push, and they did, right? And the Gophers withstood it, and goaltending was great on both sides. Like, there's a reason why, the Michigan goaltender was number 3 star of that game. I think it's 34 saves. So
he was awesome.
You knew that there'd be a push at that point. But and then a lot of power plays in that game, a lot of disjointed play because of that, the big power play goal on the 5-minute major, which gave them breathing room. And, I think what struck me this weekend is how the Gophers can win in different ways. They can win in the shootout kind of game where they score 6 goals and dominate. They can win a more tight checking game where they opportunistic and find a way to win and hold off. And their goaltending is, for having a team that had a guy like Close for a few years there, who was their number 1 guy and number 1 guy only. And now they have a couple goaltenders in Liam, and they're polar opposites, as you know, Scott, in personality, but both pitch shutouts in back-to-back games against Michigan, which is very rare to do, even though Michigan is not as good as they've been in previous years. I think the guys we talked to for another podcast later on this month on this team are saying that that's one of those moments you might look back on in March or April, we'll be like, oh, that's one where they kind of came together a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And it is a good Michigan team, but like you said, maybe not the best they've had in a while. And like I was a little embarrassed too, because I completely spaced on the fact that Michael Hage wasn't playing until I walked past him up top and he was in a walking boot. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, you're on this team too. That would probably make a bit of a difference.
The top player on that team is not playing, but yes.
Nope.
Yeah, but still, yeah, I do think that, win like that, and who knows what happens against Michigan State over the weekend, which will be another big test, another top team before previously in the country, and they'll be there towards the end as well. So I think that'll be with guys that they're missing, right, for World Junior Camp, and
that's what
guys that are banged up. So it won't be a full-fledged Gopher roster for that matchup, but this is where you start to see how good this team actually is, right, in conference play and against some of these better teams, against the rivals. And so, yeah, a win or loss in the weekend won't be a season make, but it'll definitely help them see where they are going into the second half of the season.
Yeah, that's really going to be the tough part of this coming weekend with Michigan State, and it's going to make it a good challenge for the team. They went into Michigan, the Michigan game here, not really having their full roster already. Lost 2 more guys during the game. Not confident we're going to have them back this weekend. And then Matthew Wood takes off for, Canada's camp, World Junior. They kick it off a week before USA does. It's going to be a tough battle. And like, this is a team that just went from 1, got knocked down to 3 after a not so great showing against Wisconsin. They're going to come in looking for blood. And they know, like, these are the 2 teams that are going to pace the Big Ten. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the Gophers can do shorthanded. But they still, like, it's a deep team. They have every bit of the chops to contend with them here. It's just going to be very, very interesting. The goalies are going to be tested a little bit more than maybe they have so far.
And Scott, I'll ask you, since obviously you've been around the Gophers a lot longer than I have. Bob and Motzko and the whole team is praising up, and for good reason, the blue line, right? Middlestat, the whole group, Denzel, like, bona fide prospect there, as good as there can be, or underrated, or whatever. Like, how would you stack this blue line against the blue line you saw 2 years ago in the Frozen Four, when you had Faber, Lacombe, Johnson? Like, just how would you, like, anytime you have a great program, you're going to compare the different groups, but like, how would you compare this group to like that one?
Yeah, they're definitely different. And I think the interesting thing with this group too is, like, we're seeing it now, and Bob mentions it every week, but this wasn't a blue line that we necessarily came in and said, this is going to be one that is mentioned in the same breath as 2023. I don't think the offensive firepower quite matches up. And that's not saying there's any shortage of it. Like, all these guys have the offensive chops, with the shortage of, maybe like a Cal Thomas, who is absolutely out there to just shut down any offense from the other team. But it's funny. Someone actually texted me this week and said, like, Sam Renzel is the best, offensive defenseman for the Gophers since, and then kind of had a blank. And my response was Jackson Lacombe. I'm like, that is a guy who I don't think got nearly his due. I mean, he did that year, but like, people forget so quickly. And he was a guy that could run that power play like no one else. But I think when you look at just the all around capabilities of this group, like, everyone can play defensively. Everyone's got the chops both ways. Whereas some of the guys on that 23 group, a little bit more of offensive merchants. And that's not to say that they were slouches defensively, but like, I look at a guy like Sam Renzel, and the reason that I've, since the beginning of the year, said this is a guy that's going to be in the Hobie conversation coming the end of the year. Yeah, he's got 8 goals, leading defenseman in college hockey, but there's so much he's doing the other direction. And he's shown so much growth and poise from his freshman year that I think that's the big thing, is these guys have all taken steps. And you mentioned it right there, Joe. Motzko has praised Middlestat. like says he's one of the best defensemen in the country that nobody knows about. And if they can stay healthy and we get their top group going into the end of the year, like they hands down the best blue line in the country.
I mean, it's hard to argue against. I mean, like obviously the depth wise gives them an edge in a lot of places. And in, like you mentioned, offensive capabilities, like Faber didn't really play power play in Minnesota, right?
Right.
Look what he did.
It's crazy.
Look what he did in his rookie year at the Wild, and he was running power play, and he was right up there in points with the rookie leaders.
Yeah, what was he like number 4 probably in the power play depth chart for the Gophers? Just because that's how stacked they were with offensive talent.
And like he clearly could do it. Like he didn't just like all of a sudden show up at the NHL like I can do the power play.
Right.
But yeah, I think the Gophers are going to go as far as like their top guys take them, but the blue line is clearly what got them a couple years back, aside from their top line, which was unbelievable and historic and whatever you want to call it. But that blue line was incredible and versatile and experienced. And so if you're looking for a team, you want to build it from the back end forward, the goaltending, the blue line, and you're seeing with this Gopher team, their goaltending, no matter who they put in the net, has been really good so far. And their blue line is stepped up. And that's going to be a really encouraging sign, I think, if you're going towards the playoff type part of season, where the lines can kind of get jumbled and you can get some guys getting slumps in there and there. But if you have a healthy and blue line that's really played with a lot of confidence and you have goaltending, they'll pick one eventually. They're not going to have back and forth all the time, but that's where I think they'll be the biggest strength.
And I mean, Bob said just as much. They're like, "Oh, is this tough that you have this decision make?" He's like, "Oh, this is the easiest decision ever. Let them keep going, and eventually we'll make a decision, but we don't have to make one anytime soon." They're pretty okay riding both, and why wouldn't you with how they've played? And I think the other thing that's going to help them long term is just these injuries are forcing them to shuffle the lines up a bit, and you're seeing some interesting combos come about. And like Oliver Moore, who we just spoke with earlier today, he is playing some of his best hockey the last couple of weeks after having a pretty slow start. And he wasn't playing bad, just wasn't putting the puck in the net. But right now, like last weekend, Joe, so not against Michigan, but the prior weekend, Bob basically said that Oliver Moore was like dragging the entire team with him to keep them afloat. And that's what we need to be seeing from guys like that in their sophomore year. Like he is buzzing. The speed is there. He's all over the place. It's going to be interesting to see once they have a pretty healthy roster, if we ever get to that point. It's not just the defense. The whole team is deep, top to bottom, and I don't think any team wants to play them fully healthy. That's for sure.
And the Blackhawks are in a poor spot right now, but they have some embarrassment of riches in the prospect pool. Nazar, Rindell, Oliver Moore. So the future is coming for them. Speaking of easy decisions to make in net, the Minnesota Wild have one very easy one this year with Filip Gustavsson. And Scott, we talked about this since the beginning of the summer of like what'll happen with Filip Gustavsson. Will he be traded? Will he be in the trade block? And clearly he was on the trade market. The trade winds were blowing in that direction and potentially on the move. And I think Bill Guerin should thank his lucky stars that no one picked up on it, because he's been there, aside from Kirill Kaprizov, of course, might be even 1A, 1B MVP of their entire season right now. Look at the differences in the roster, go from expected goals allowed or percentage from like 23 to first or top 3. That's the way you get to the top of your division, top of the NHL. You want to know why they're doing so well. They're defending so well, and their goaltending has been terrific. Fleury got his first regulation loss over the weekend. So Gustavsson, in your mind, what are you surprised about, and where do they go with him beyond this season? He got from a guy that was potentially on the block to now, do you have to kind of think about, hey, is he a guy you can really build around for this team?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think you and I were on the same page. No one saw this season coming. like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that like I knew Gustavsson was going to be this good, but everyone had to kind of decide, is he going to be more like 2 years ago or more like last year? I think we both fell in the camp of more likely that he plays more like year one with the Wild rather than year two. But what's so surprising to me is that he has taken over the net, right? We heard all offseason about the 3 goalie rotation. Like, this is Fleury's final year. And not only has Wallstedt all but been jettisoned down to Iowa, Fleury's not getting games either. Like, Gustavsson has full control, and he doesn't seem like he's going to be relinquishing it anytime soon. And I think that's an incredible thing for the Wild. Like, it's great that he's doing that because, like you said, 1A, 1B between him and Kirill. The one thing that scares me a little bit is if his game falls off or if he gets injured, now we've got Fleury and Wallstedt who've got very few games mounted between them. So you're putting a lot of eggs in a great basket, but it's still scary to think, what happens if he falters?
Well, that could happen absolutely eventually here. But for me, I kind of back at it from last year when Gustavsson was struggling, and going to this year, I even asked Bill Guerin over the summer. I'm like, most people think that Gustavsson is probably not the guy 2 years ago that was top 3 or Vezina candidate in the goals against average, whatever, and probably better than he was last year. In Guerin's like probably somewhere in the middle, right? And I think they'd be happy with somewhere in the middle. Now he's pretty much towards he was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So whether he's that guy for 10 years, we don't know. That's the volatility of goaltenders. But last year, think about it. He went to a new contract, coming to want to be number one. The pressure that, he had a first-time father, as both of us know. The schedule is kind of crazy, and they have more support systems than we have. Obviously, as a professional athlete, but it does affect a lot of things: your life, personal life, job life. So a lot of things. A guy coming into his year, a lot of pressure, contract, all that stuff. So things that kind of went into play for that. But it is hard to predict and project when you're a team. Like, okay, is this who he is? Is he legit like a Jeremy Swayman, or is he something that could be someone that's like a couple good flashes and for a couple months and all of a sudden be that, and then you want to move your Wallstedt plan up a little bit. So, but I think it's a good problem to have for the Wild. He's under contract, and he's under contract at a very cheap rate. He's obviously a guy who could mentally handle the really tough year last year, and a lot of trust in his teammates this year, as he said, and showed he can be that guy. And so once you have a known quantity, a lot easier to bet on than an unknown, right? And Wallstedt hasn't been great, clearly, in Iowa. He struggled, and a lot of things are a reason for that. But, when you have a team that's capable of clearly being a top team in the conference for half a season, you got to roll with the hot hand.
For sure. And again, obviously we haven't seen Wallstedt up here, and we can certainly speak about the challenges he's faced just with expectations coming into the year, and obviously those not following suit. But I think this is the exact reason that you and I wanted Gustavsson to stay, right? Mm-hmm. Looking at next year, whether or not Wallstedt's ready to have the reins tossed to him, you still got to have another guy, as we've seen in this league. And Fleury's going to be gone. Goalies are not cheap off the free agent market. Like, even if Gustavsson was like 70 to 80% of what he's doing right now, you still want him there to be your 1A, 1B kind of guy. And if it means going into next year, he is your solid one and Wallstedt's his backup, so be it. I'm okay with that, because I think Guerin's made it pretty clear they're pushing the chips. Doesn't mean that they're going like all in and just going to sell the farm to try and run for cups the next 2 years, but like they definitely see themselves as contenders, and you can't be that without goaltending.
You can't. And if you want to sell Kirill Kaprizov, you're gonna be a contender, right? And like this is the best start possible if you're trying to convince Kirill Kaprizov, like, hey, stick around, like sign in July 1st. Like if you're, President's Trophy winners or whatever the heck happens at the end of the year, like they got to win the playoffs, of course. This is not, putting the cart before the horse here, but it's obviously a lot better than it could have been considering the circumstances. And so Kirill says, hey, goaltending, there's, Rossi's playing really well. You have Zuccarello's signed another year. You have Boldy's another really good superstar. You have Faber. We'll see Z buy him probably eventually end of the season. So, I think, and the dead cap hits will be very severely lessened going to next season. And the cap, who knows what it goes up to next year.
Yeah.
So we'll have a chance
big factor
to go after whether it's your favorite Brock, Besser, Nelson.
Yeah, your pick. Which Brock do you want?
which Minnesotan do you want to have on your team next year? So they'll be going to free agency. So they'll have chances to add. So I think that the idea we went in and we wrote going to the season, me and Mike Russo, my colleague at The Athletic, about this being a huge year for the Wild, and it certainly is. Big picture of hey, after years of being good, and 100-point seasons are really good, but you have to show you can do something more. This is obviously an encouraging start on a lot of counts for if you're a big picture Wild fan to see the current core plus the younger core potentially going with it.
Absolutely, yeah. And we will actually dive in a little bit more on that younger core on the other side here. Quick word from our friends. Hey, beer lovers. Stop into 9 Mile Brewing to check out their seasonal offerings like Mallet Mike's Rye Porter or Two for His Nibs, a barrel-aged honeybush vanilla red ale. These delightful brews go well with the hockey and the crazy winter weather on the horizon. And be sure to check out 9 Mile's events page to see what's coming up this month, like Trivia Mafia. I know they've got the Music Mayhem trivia right now. We've got cribbage tournaments, crokinole tournaments, a ton of other activities you'll want to make sure you're on the watch for. And just make sure, if you haven't already, get out to their tap room in Bloomington, see what all the hype's about. All right, Joe, a little prospect talk. I'm curious from your perspective. I don't know, between you and Mike, what's been talked about, what you see from your colleagues at The Athletic, just general sentiment, who are our top prospects? And you don't have to give me a top 5 or a top 10, but just kind of take it as you will. Who do you see as our top prospects moving forward?
Well, I think there's 3 main ones you look at. You look at Jesper Wallstedt, who we've had on our podcast a few weeks back, who we've thought in theory and could very well be the goalie of the future, depending on what happens going forward here with Gustavsson. But he's a title goalie prospect, so he's number 1 of them. Urov, who's kind of the unknown because people haven't seen him very actively in North America, but everyone's wondering, is he a number 1 center? Is he a top 6 guy? People think he is, but they won't know until next year in North America. Zeev Buyam, who we'll have on a future podcast here, will be one that you'll think you'll see towards the end of this year, potentially, after the Frozen Four, if Denver gets that far and ends up playing there. Those are probably the top 3 prospects in my mind for the Wild. You have Charlie Stramel, which we'll talk about, and Riley Height, who's making a push, of course. He went back to the WHL this year, but so I think those are the ones that we're looking at, because you guys have graduated from prospect status, are the Fabers and the Rossies and all that stuff. So those are the ones that are, in my minds, who are pretty much untouchable for me if you're talking about kind of trade types things. Yeah.
I really think the big, and if we're going to tier it out, I think there's anywhere from 4 to 6 guys that kind of sit in that top-ish tier. The ones you hit on there, I would say it's, in no particular order: Buyam, Wallstedt, Urov, Height, and then I think Juracek has to be thrown into that discussion right now. Obviously too soon to really measure what he is. He hasn't played at all in the NHL, just got sent down to Iowa. Thank God. Let's get the boy some minutes. But I think those 5 for sure round out that top group. And there's a couple of forwards that I think warrant discussion outside of that. I think, Milne and Haight are guys that are definitely pressing. Ogren is definitely among that group. I'd say most fans would probably say Ogren's in that top 5, top 6 group, like pretty cut and dry. But it's all going to come down to the timing, right? All anyone complained about all offseason is, we're re-signing all these guys. We're bringing in guys like Trenyan, and there's no spots for the young guys. How are we going to make this work? How are they going to get any better and develop? We got to give them a chance. I got to think that chance comes for a couple of them at the end of this year, but for most of them, it's going to be quite the open competition in training camp next year with a couple of contracts falling off, but it's not like there's going to be a crazy amount of roster spots open, right?
There won't be. You look at the guys that they've signed already, unless Rossi is moved, right? Like if Rossi is moved, then you open up another center spot for Urov, who's played a lot of center over in the KHL. Nick Johansson probably is in his last year, with the Minnesota Wild, and other guys are signed for longer term. Hartman, Foligno, you mentioned Trenyan.
Not to mention some of the trades that we've floated with Minnesotan Brox, or not trades, signings. It's interesting to wonder when they're going to get a chance, but obviously if they're good enough, Karen's made it clear, if they're good enough, they're going to play.
Yeah, and as long as Spurgeon and Brodin are healthy, they're on the team, unless you trade one of them. I don't think they maybe, I don't know, but Faber and Middleton signed multi-year extension.
And are looking incredible, by the way.
Yeah.
People were not happy about the Middleton deal. And hand up, I have no problem with the deal. It's the trend that we've gotten into of signing these guys a year early when it's not necessarily needed or warranted. Now, Middleton's the first one where Garen can look at me and tell me how big of an idiot I am, because the year he's having so far, he would have gotten paid more. It's just tough after the trifecta of Zuccarello, Hartman, and Foligno for some fans to look past the is this turning into the country club again? And all it takes is a little bit of winning for people to move off of that schneid a little bit.
Yeah, and clearly they'll have Zeev, William will be there potentially. And then Declan Chisholm, we haven't talked about yet. He's been terrific stepping in since Brodin went down. For him to step in after in and out and whatever, not having a chance to play, all of a sudden be in a regular situation. Who knows what his future looks like, considering the guys that they've signed long term here. But that's an excellent depth piece to have, and he's showing he's auditioning for himself and auditioning for the rest of the league. Guys on waivers last year, remember? He's one of our first guests in our podcast, and now he's clearly playing a really big role. And who knows how long Brodin's out? He might be playing a bigger role for a little longer. That just shows you those kind of moves can pay off dividends, even though it's a year after the fact.
No, for sure. And it couldn't be happier for that guy with the way the season started, and to see him finally get his chance and just take it and run. You got to love that. Let's talk real quick then. It's been awesome to see the comeback story of Charlie Stramel. Before we kick it over and hear from him more directly, I think we all came into this fairly cautiously optimistically, but we're all okay, it's definitely not going to be any worse or as bad as it was in Wisconsin. He got a pretty raw deal with how everything shook out there, but the reunion with Nightingale has been pretty awesome for him.
It's been great. And again, it's a lot of pressure to be a local kid picked by the Wild, picked by the Wild in the first round, and then obviously get off to a slow start, and then see people like Gabe Perreault and everybody else burn everything else down with how well they're doing. I feel you feel for Charlie because of it's not his fault. in a lot of ways he could have played better the first couple of years, but a lot of pressure that goes with being a number one overall first round pick for Minnesota Wild is a lot of pressure. So I give him credit for realizing some of the things that he didn't do well the first couple of years and getting away from his identity, as he told us. Finding a coach, obviously, who trusts and believes in him, and Nightingale, Michigan State, and finding the right fit for him. And you could tell last weekend against the Badgers, that win on Saturday, his fingerprints all over it. Got the, it's the goal to make it 2-1, assist in the overtime winner. A lot of confidence. He's playing in both power play penalty kill. He's playing in overtime. He's getting a lot of trust from his coaching staff, and that's what he needs. And I think people need to understand that there's not every player they draft is going to be number one center, right? If the world comes out the way it's
especially not at the end of the first round, right?
Yeah.
like that's just not how it works.
Again, like if the Wild end up being what people want them to be, like X going to be a top 6 center, and if Rossi's here, he's top 6, and Urov is a top 6, right? Like you can't have like 8 top 6 centers, right? And I think of having a really good, big third line center who could play both power play penalty kill and be a power forward and win faceoffs is a pretty valuable thing. And if that's what Charlie Stramel turns out to be, that's what he wants to be, that's what people who are around him believe he can be, then that's, it's not a flashy pick in the first round, but if he turns into that guy, then that's going to be a huge thing for them. And the Wild, and we'll have a story in the Athletic running on Thursday on Charlie Stramel, and talking to the Wild, talking to him, talking to Michigan State folk and everything else like that, just of where they are and him and his belief as a prospect. But, he's somebody you can see and dissect a lot more than you can see a Urov, right? He's a guy you can see in the deficiencies and the warts more than you can see a Urov, because he's so far away, and they're not the same player. And Urov probably he definitely has a more of a higher end capabilities as in his position, but definitely a resurgent year for Stramel, and their big belief in him as a prospect. And we'll see what happens the rest of the way, but it'll be a fun weekend at Mariucci for him to go back to his hometown area. Jimmy Clark, Snuggerud, good friend of his, and Oliver Moore, former teammate. Like, it's going to be one hell of a weekend for him to come back and show Gophers and Wild fans what he's all about. And we were happy to have him on our podcast and tell us all about it.
That's right. Let's kick it over to Charlie. This interview is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions. All the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it, that makes you say, wow, that was made for me. Because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your waggle on? Go to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 at checkout to take 10% off your entire order. Joining the show today is one of us by way of Rosemount, Minnesota, where he played one season of high school hockey before making the jump to the USNTDP, all leading to the 2023 NHL Draft, where the Minnesota Wild used their first round pick to select him 21st overall, Charlie Stramel. And I think we got to start there, Charlie, because I've been criticized no matter how I pronounce your name. I say Stramel, they say Stramel. I say Stramel, they say Stramel. Set the record straight. How do we say it?
Stramel, like Stramel. Like
All right, there you go.
There you go.
And I caught myself doing it again. All right. Hopefully that's the last time I get corrected. Well, really appreciate you jumping on here, man. First question that we ask everybody, and you've grown up, had the Wild forever. First time you saw that logo, what did you think it was?
Ooh, that's a good question. Honestly, I don't even know if I could recall like specifically first time, since I was so young, and my parents were always Wild fans growing up before I was even born. So I don't know, like the wilderness maybe, like is maybe what I thought when I saw the logo first time.
And who was your favorite Wild player? Was it Parise, or who were the guys you watched that you were your top guys that you like to emulate?
I'd say growing up when I was younger, yeah, definitely when Parise and Suter came over, that was kind of a big deal. I remember watching them a lot. Obviously, Koivu is a legend here. Granlund, when he was here for a little while, they made that little run. I'd say those are the names that kind of come to mind.
Were you at the game when Granlund scored his ridiculous, at the ridiculous moment?
I was not at the game, but I was definitely watching. Yep.
Well, as you can tell, it's Fellowship of the Rink is the name of our podcast, a stick tap to Lord of the Rings. I wasn't sure if you're a Lord of the Rings fan or like, if not, like what's your kind of nerddom or nerd itch? Like what's your movie series or book series or collectible that you're thing off the ice?
Yeah, I'm not a Lord of the Rings guy, but I'd say, I'm a big Harry Potter guy. So I watched that for the first time last year and I was very, very, was not expecting what I saw. So I liked it a lot. There's my nerd itch. Yeah.
What house would you be in? You figured that out?
Ooh.
Which house would you be
I
in?
don't even know. Slytherin? Is that the main one?
Slytherin, yeah. So.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, obviously, we see at the backdrop behind you, a lot of legends go through Michigan State. Ron Mason, I covered college hockey back in Michigan when I was at school. Being there now seems like you really had a great start. And I was just curious, just what been the biggest spark you think for you in terms of the biggest change where it feels like you're playing with a lot of confidence right now?
Yeah, I think like you just said, big thing was getting the confidence back for sure. Since the start of this year, confidence has been up a lot compared to the last 2 seasons. So I think that was a big one. I think getting into the culture here at Michigan State really helps you elevate your game. The way guys go about their day-to-days here, whether it's the coaches or the players or staff, like that kind of helped me elevate my game from the start and really get back to playing, my style, better hockey than I did at Wisconsin.
And maybe I know you go back with Nightingale there. Like, how much is he part of this kind of a little bit of a turnaround for you? Like, how does he kind of get a lot out of you in this particular way?
Yeah, I think it's been awesome. He's been, one of my favorite coaches since I met him at the program. So I think just coming here and having that initial trust was big. And then doing everything I can to, help the team win. And Knights is awesome with not just, helping us become a team here and building culture, but really guy to guy, up and down the lineup, helping people develop their game, not just for this level, but the next level as well.
Was there a conversation or coaching moment you had with you maybe early on in camp, like saying, hey, like put the last year or so behind you, or like, how do you, or like just maybe some encouragement of like, hey, I've seen you play the certain way of the program. Like, was there any kind of conversation or words of wisdom that he kind of specifically shared to you that kind of like helped a little bit early on?
Yeah, for sure. I remember early in the summer, we talked on the phone a good amount and just how, you got to come into this season with a chip on your shoulder. That was a big thing he told me. And we're here to, prove people wrong as a team. And then as for you to individually as well. So come in with a chip on your shoulder. We're going to change your body in the summer here, get you in a better shape and take off from there. So I think just from the first phone call in the summer, like just knowing that he's got my back and I'm going to do everything I can to help this team win. And yeah.
How involved have the Minnesota Wild been like through that transition, like whether it's pointing you in the right direction for a good fit or even just what you're working on in the offseason to continue growing your game?
Yeah, they've been awesome, since the start, since the day they drafted me. The development guys, always here to, watch games and even in the summer helping out a little bit and just trying to, help me develop as a player from the start. And then you said, what's the second part of that question? What in the summer was I working on or?
I mean, just anything really they've pointed you towards for like how to keep building your game.
Your body, get in better shape.
Yeah. Just continue to, a big thing for me, I think, is moving my feet. A lot of people are on me about that, coaches and obviously the Wild. Make sure I'm playing a power forward game. I think at times in Wisconsin, I got away from my identity. I was trying to do too much or not playing the way, I need to play to be a successful player at this level. So I think getting to those power forward basics, moving your feet, taking the pucks to the net, being good in the forecheck is kind of a big thing that they are very vocal about. And I've been trying to work on and continue to grow on.
You have to be confident to get to this level and eventually the NHL. But I was wondering how hard was it the last couple of years? Your first round pick and obviously a lot of pressure on you. Like, we know you're not going to be like a 50 goal scorer, but you want to be able to produce a little bit. But how much did it weigh on you the last year or so, knowing you maybe didn't play your identity?
Yeah, I think definitely, like you said, ups and downs, wasn't playing my identity fully at Wisconsin over that time. But I think through those, ups and downs at Wisconsin, you learn a lot about yourself, and how to handle adversity. So I think going through that for me on a personal level was pretty important. And to be able to, maybe figure out that Wisconsin maybe wasn't the best fit and find a new fit and really try and bounce back. And like Nighty said, come in with a chip on my shoulder and play like that power forward identity and, play the way I can play to be successful at this level.
So what is that like? Like deciding, hey, I'm leaving this school I've been at for 2 years. I'm going to enter the transfer portal. Like still kind of a weird new thing to, a lot of fans and people covering the game. What's it like?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting process. Kind of for me to wait till the season's over and then kind of decide, for me, well, I was kind of like, this maybe isn't the right fit for me here at Wisconsin. And so it was immediately getting to the portal, start talking to, former coaches and agents and all that and figuring out kind of what's going to be the best fit for me. It's kind of like almost getting recruited again, a couple of years back when I was getting recruited to come to college in the first place. But it was a cool experience. And honestly, it was kind of a no-brainer to come here. I was here from the start. If I was going to leave Wisconsin, it was go somewhere where you have some people you can trust. And obviously they've been doing great here as well, even before I came in. So it's a no-brainer.
And you don't have to throw other teams in, but were there others that were in consideration, or was it pretty much, I'm going to Michigan State?
Honestly, not. Yeah, it was always Michigan State. If I was going to leave, I was going to come here. So not really, no.
And now you guys are sitting as of this morning, number 1 in the country. Be honest, like it's got to at least feel a little good to look over and see Wisconsin struggling after you left.
No, I don't think so. Honestly, I still got a lot of buddies
nice
on that team, a lot of respect for the staff there and what they've done to kind of turn that place around, especially last season. But I think they got some wins coming for sure. They still got some talent on that roster. They play hard. I am looking forward to playing them though. That'll be a cool experience for sure.
Like a chip on your shoulder, right? Is there a little more motivation kind of go in there and kind of, showing the fans there too, people followed you, kind of how good you've been playing this year?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like I said, playing against those guys, it's going to be fun, playing in their building. It's going to be fun being on the other side of it. It always is. So it's, I'll be lying to you if I'm not, probably most excited for those games this season, but it's going to be a battle, maybe not the hottest start for them, but I know they got a great team, great guys in the room, and, they're going to be a team that's hard to play against.
You mentioned like leaning on different former coaches and people, during that process in the portal. Like, who are some examples of people you kind of leaned on in that process for advice of, whether finding the right fit or just overall going through that process?
Yeah, I think a big one was obviously you lean on the agents. They've been there before, seen players go through that before. I think family members like my mom, seeing her opinion, and even like film coaches, just people that have seen, coach people and seen guys go through that before, were kind of big ones for me. But, like I said earlier, when I entered the portal, I kind of knew where I was going. So it might have been a little bit different than other prospects. Like I didn't have to really weigh many options.
Yep, a pretty exciting line mate in Howard there. I remember covering his draft and the suit he showed up in, Miami Vice style stuff. How are you guys alike off the ice? How are you guys alike on the ice? What makes you guys get a good fit?
Yeah, he's one of my best buddies. We grew up kind of playing against each other and with each other a little bit, just in the AAA scene, and then obviously played together at the program for 2 years and we're really good buddies there. So that was also another thing, when he transferred from Duluth, I was, asking him at the end of the season how he liked it here, and he had nothing but great things to say. And to come over here and, have the opportunity to play in a line with him, obviously great player, but also an unreal guy, one of my best buddies. So to lace him up with him every night's for sure, it's a good feeling.
And across the aisle, we had a guy on just a couple of weeks ago here, and Jimmy Clark, who, when we asked him right away, like, hey, who are guys you clicked with in prospect camp, dev camp? And he's like, yeah, me and Charlie have played for a while together. And obviously awesome seeing you do so well over in Michigan State. But I mean, Jimmy's had quite the start to this year too. Actually, I think you just hit your point total from last year, like 30% of the games in, and we had him on. He had just hit his previous year's point total. Like, it's got to feel pretty good having both of you pop off like this.
For sure. Yeah. Clarky's a great guy. Like you said, I've known him for a while as well growing up, and he's always been a good buddy. And yeah, to see him kind of have, a great year this year so far, they got a great team over there too. It's exciting. It's exciting to see that for sure.
You talked about going into Wisconsin. Like that's obviously the one that you circled right away when you got the schedule. Obviously being drafted by the Wild, coming in to play the Gophers, the last game before the holiday break in World Juniors. And you said it, right? You're back to your identity. You're playing the game you want to play.
Yeah.
How excited are you for that one, playing again in front of Wild fans?
That'll be a big one. It's always fun coming back. Even when I was at Wisconsin, coming back and playing the Gophers at Mariucci is always a great experience. Obviously, they're having a great start to the year so far this year, so that'll be a great matchup as well. And really just coming home and playing in front of all those friends and family that live in that area. And like you said, like being from Minnesota is always cool coming back and playing there. So that's always been one that I definitely look forward to as well when I see it on the calendar.
What's your favorite childhood memory playing hockey in the state here? What was your favorite, childhood memory? Like, could have been the backyard rink, could have been something your parents set you up with, or like what's your favorite childhood memory?
Yeah, I'd say well, you touched on backyard rink for sure. I think growing up, my dad would build a backyard rink almost every summer. And those were definitely some of my favorite memories, first times lacing them up, getting used to the game, and just having that in my backyard was a pretty cool experience for me and my siblings to share at that age.
And obviously, sorry for his passing a few years back. I know he's a big, huge influence on your life now. Like, what was the biggest influence in your career for him? And maybe things that you've learned from him you kind of take to this day, like the last couple of years when he wasn't around?
Yeah, he's a huge, huge reason why, I am where I'm at, and it's all thanks to him. And yeah, I'd say some things like you said, just the dedication he'd put in, waking up, driving me to the rink before school at 5 a.m., building backyard rinks every single winter, keeping that up to date, like little things like that, just the sacrifices he made when he was around, I definitely won't ever forget. And it means a lot.
You referred to kind of, changing your body a little bit over the summer, and how, like, there's a lot of different ways you can do that, right? Some people build on speed, Some people just do body fat, whatever. What was kind of directive or message you wanted to, or thing you wanted to change the most about to get you back to your game?
Yeah, I think right when I got in, the strength coach here at State, Will Morlock, I had him at the program too, and I truly believe he's the best strength coach in the nation. He's got his stuff dialed in every single day. So we have a little 6-week camp here where we're pushing it pretty hard in the gym, and me and him got out a plan and stuck to it. So I dropped a lot in body fat, put a lot of muscle back on, and really feel like I'm in the best physical shape of my life, currently. So I think continuing to build on that and working with Will every day, even in season, getting the lifts in, like he's been a huge help. And yeah, it was an awesome summer with him.
Talk about the draft experience. Like, again, we've talked a lot about Minnesota hockey here. You grew up following the team. You get drafted by the Minnesota Wild. Like, what was that day like?
Yeah, it was a crazy experience, obviously. Yeah, just going into the draft, you're always super nervous draft night, and then sitting there when the Wild walk up to the stage, you're obviously thinking it in your head, manifesting it, but at the end of the day, you think it's too good to be true. So to really hear my name called by them was a really cool experience, and something I definitely won't forget.
Was there a lot of meetings with them beforehand? Did you kind of have an idea that if you had a certain spot, they'd be there, or was it kind of a little bit of surprise to you still based on other teams you talked to in that first round?
Yeah, I had some meetings with them and some other teams. I definitely thought like a little bit, but I said, I thought yeah, they were very supportive in their meetings, but you never know if they're trying to play mind games and how it gets. So for me, it was really too good to be true, but you always keep the options open. And yeah, like I said, an unreal experience there in Nashville.
Any weird questions from Billy and Judd?
Not much, honestly. I'm trying to think back. That was a few years ago at this point. With obviously the animal one they always ask about. But yeah, other than that, not really.
The cool or not cool part about the draft is all the projections, right? You're trying to project what a 17-year-old is going to be in the NHL at a different level, and they say, "Oh, this guy's a second line center, this is a third line winger." Like, this is like, what are your expectations, or yourself better than anybody else does, any scout does? Like, what do you project yourself as kind of a best fit for your identity, kind of on an NHL team?
Yeah, I'd say just that 200-foot, power forward that can move, using his size to advantage, like I talked about earlier, like getting hard on the forecheck, being F1, getting back, winning draws, ability to create plays in front of the net at times. I think really the big thing would be playing to those strengths of the true power forward strengths up the middle of the ice.
And so, like, maybe last year you were trying to score too much, I guess, or maybe the things you were trying to do in Wisconsin, maybe try to get out of your game to try to maybe work your way out of something. Is that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think I built a lot of bad habits at time early on in my college career. Getting away from what made me the player I was, growing up and going through the program, and didn't get myself in the best position and ended up, not having a great 2 seasons. But like I said earlier, it was a big thing getting my identity back over the summer and early in this season. So continuing to stick to that and build on that power forward game.
Nice. 2 questions, and then we will let you get back to class here, Charlie. Aside from Jimmy, anyone that popped out or stood out to you at Dev Camp where you're like, God, it'd be really fun to play on a line with this guy?
Oh, yeah, obviously I'd say Clarkey for sure. And then I go like Ogren's a great player. I love watching him play. Very skilled, played against him in a few U18s, never liked being on the wrong side against him. So I'd say he's definitely a guy that comes to mind, and, definitely a guy that would be fun to play on a line with one day.
And you said trust obviously was something you got from Nightingale. Like, how do you describe to fans, like, what a difference that makes when you have that kind of rapport with a coach, or you have that kind of, how does that kind of translate into, a better performance on the ice when you have that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think having that trust is huge, knowing that he's got your back and you got his back when it comes to stepping on the ice every day. And trust is huge. Trust helps a lot, I think, with confidence from a player too. If I go out there and maybe make a mistake, like, yeah, Knights isn't going to be too happy, but, I'm probably going to get out there next shift and have a chance to make it right type thing. So I think that was a big one for me coming here and having that trust with Knights and knowing he's going to give me an opportunity to prove myself here. And he's done that so far, and he's been awesome so far. So
nice. How's the golf game, Charlie?
The golf game's all right. It could be better, but it's on the incline for sure. It's getting better. I'm not happy it's getting cold because it still needs some work, but it's all right.
That's fair. Well, our final question here, every episode, Waggle golf question. Everybody go to getyourwaggleon.com. Throw in promo code SP10 to take 10% off your entire order. Charlie, we need 3 names. Guys that are going to round out your dream golf foursome. It could be celebrity. It could be fictional, dead or alive, athlete. What do we got?
Oh, that's a good question. I think Tiger's a no-brainer. Who else? Maybe like I saw that big match that Wayne was in the other day. I think Gretzky would be cool to play with. He looked like a pretty good golfer. Lights went off. And then I'll go. I think it was a good one. Maybe like a MJ. I'll keep it simple. That'd be cool. That'd be cool for some.
Be a competitive group there. That'd be a lot of money lost on that golf foursome there.
Seriously.
Wait until you get your first NHL paycheck before doing that one.
Okay.
Well, thanks so much, Charlie, for joining us. What's your class you're taking now? What is your major? What's your kind of thing you're focused on? Like, for if you're not playing hockey, what would your career be, I guess?
Oh, that's a good question. Right now I'm going into like communication major. I'm not sure exactly outside of hockey what I do job specific yet, but I mean, I guess that's why I'm taking classes and stuff and trying to learn more about that here and get a degree. So I don't know. I'm in communications, but not sure a future career yet.
If it makes you feel any better, I don't know what I'm going to do either. So
got a pretty good feel there in hockey for a while. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy that one for a long time.
Hopefully, yes.
Well, thanks for taking the time before the holiday. Have a great holiday, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. You guys have great holidays as well.
He seemed so like laid back and relaxed, and it was just such an easy conversation to have with Charlie.
It was, and like I think a lot of times you deal with athletes and you deal with players and you deal with college athletes and you understand a lot of where they came from and how they were raised. And I was fortunate enough to cover the draft when Charlie was taken in the first round. I met his mother. Both Mike Russo and I talked to her and to Charlie about, his late father and what impact that he had on his life, still does, and how grounded he is and how much perspective he has on things, to where I think not a lot of things like really jars him or gets to him to where he's going to overwhelmingly like kind of get thrown off of his path. And so I think for those of us probably on the outside who look inside and think, oh, this is a really rough year, or some fans are like, this kid's a bust, or he can't do this. And like, I think he has a pretty good self-evaluation of himself and perspective on things, and knows that, life goes on, and he has a lot of tools that can make him a really good player. And he has a support system now in Michigan State of people who know him and trust him and believe in him, and both in Nightingale, Isaac Howard, he knows it from the program, are people that can kind of be a support system for him. And he's playing like he's got a lot of confidence and trust, and that makes the world to a player. You talk to anybody in the NHL, from Stamkos to Kucherov to whoever I covered, confidence is the world, and you can lose it really fast. You can get it back. It may take a while, but he's playing like a guy who's got back to his identity, got back to what makes him successful, what will make him successful at the next level.
Absolutely. I think with Nightingale, the biggest thing is it's confidence and everything, but it's empowerment. It's just giving him the rope to go out and do what we all know he can do. And hopefully he keeps going down that track the rest of the year. I mean, can you imagine, Joe, if it's Buyam, Jimmy Clark, and Charlie Stramel all competing in the Frozen Four? Like, what are we going to do? Like, how can you write all of those stories at once?
I would love to be doing that in St. Louis and figuring out which one to be where. Like,
great problems.
If the Gophers are there and Denver's there and like Michigan State's there, like I'll be the busiest man in St. Louis in April. It'll be fun. Like, it'll be fun. I love college hockey. I think it's a great atmosphere everywhere you go, and especially Frozen Four. I've been to a number of them, and especially if it's a lot of wild prospects, I know people in this area will be in bated breath for whatever happens.
And waiting for them to hopefully join the team. That's for sure. All right. Final segment every week, brought to you by our awesome friends, Barrel Theory Beer Company. Keyboard Warriors are largely NHL hot take segment, but occasionally it veers into topics outside of hockey. And you all know this weekend stretch is quite the slate of hockey. We've got Edmonton Thursday night at home. We've got a matinee Saturday game, I think 1:00, hosting Philadelphia Flyers. And then Sunday at 5:00, Vegas Golden Knights. All of you should be flocking to sections 105, 112, 217, and club level 36 for the greatest craft beer offering you're going to get at XL Energy Center, Barrel Theory. That's right. And Joe, I'm on my final couple sips here of the latest delicacy that Timmy hooked us up with, doom scrolling, which is just that hits way too close to home. I'm almost having like a little PTSD from the name. But delicious hazy IPA, 7%er, easy drinker. I know hazies are like your baby. Oh, yeah. So I mean, it just go off. How's this hazy stack up for you?
Very good. I love the design too. Like, it's like one thing to have, to have the different kind of the eyes there.
Right behind
colors, like the way I have a lot of respect for breweries when they have unique designs for it, the colors, everything else, and the names. Like, you can tell they care. But yeah, like I love hazies. I'll go anywhere in Twin Cities and get hazies or just regular IPAs and New England IPAs or whatever. It's my thing. And so thankfully, between that and Shane McGavin and all that stuff, Barrel Theory has been really good to us for that. No doubt.
Yeah. And everyone says too, it's funny if you talk to anyone in the industry, like, yeah, like the label design, the beer name, that's what's going to get someone to try you. Got to make sure the beer is good enough that they're going to have you again. And
it's still going to be good beer. It can't be. Yeah,
that's right. And Barrel Theory knocks that out of the park. Like, again, I know obviously I have to say that because they're a partner of ours, but anyone that knows me or has followed me for any extended period of time, they wouldn't be a friend or a partner if I didn't think their beer was freaking awesome. So check it out. Let us know what you think. If you get it at the game, tag us in a picture. Let us know. And producer Isha, Spoke Z, and myself will all be out at the Thursday game. So if anyone's out there, let us know. Love to grab a beer with you guys. But let's get into the hot takes here, Joe. And for once, these are all provided by yours truly, because I had several that I had bookmarked and for whatever reason lost them entirely. So we're going purely off of some of the ones from me. And one of them I planned on talking about. We'll go to that right away. And it started with Cam Robinson. Most who follow prospects are very familiar with Cam's work. Cam's awesome. He said that he's been hearing whispers that there could be some effort from the Dallas Stars to pursue Evgeny Malkin. Obviously, with Tyler Seguin going on LTIR, that's going to open up the space. They definitely have the pieces that they could potentially move in a deal like that. The real question mark is, like, does Evgeny Malkin even want to waive his no trade clause? Odds are he wants to stay in Pittsburgh. I just replied to his post and said, I'll see your Seguin LTIR and raise you a potential. We'll see what happens with Jonas Brodin, but Brodin LTIR. Evgeny Malkin in Minnesota absolutely moves them up a notch as far as trying to make a push in the playoffs and contend. You have the pieces to move, especially, again, Joe, I don't think I need to convince you. I do not want Marco Rossi to leave. I love Marco Rossi, but if Bill Guerin has decided that Marco Rossi is not staying, he is the foundational piece of a trade there. And I wouldn't mind cheering for him in Pittsburgh, so that'd be okay. But you've got Guerin and Fleury here to make it an easy transition for Evgeny Malkin, and the chance to center arguably the best Russian winger right now in Kirill Kaprizov. It's pretty freaking enticing. It's an interesting concept, and then you've got him there to usher in guys like Yurov, who's Nadinov. Do I think this is going to happen? Absolutely not. Do I think that it's a really interesting proposition if both sides had interest? Absolutely. So you tell me, if Guerin and Dubas were both down to play ball, is this the type of trade that you would even consider, or do you think I'm just out to lunch?
I think it's fun idea, and I love outside the box here. I will just
sugarcoating it so much before you.
I will defer to my esteemed colleague Rob Rossi in Pittsburgh, who said essentially, just like there's no way in hell Crosby is leaving Pittsburgh, there's no way in hell Malkin is leaving Pittsburgh. And I know they're different. They're different. I get it. They're not the same. I get the Guerin thing. The Fleury thing. Yeah, it's hard to imagine. Oh yeah, I guess it was hard to imagine Stamkos playing for the Nashville Predators too, right? So like, there's things there are things that you did not think would happen that did happen, but you know, yeah. I think if you're the Wild and you're in the top position or close top position in the conference in March, and you have a chance to go for a big fish, I think that with the history of this franchise and having the best player in franchise history, and like you mentioned, Kirill Kaprizov, and like, I think you go for whatever you can go for. I don't know if it's Rossi or whatever, but I just don't. It's hard for me to imagine Malkin playing anywhere else. And for you as a Pittsburgh fan, yeah. I think I can. He doesn't seem like a Fedorov type that will go sign with the Blue Jackets somewhere, or like whatever.
True.
I just don't. I don't see that. So I don't know him well, so I don't want to speak for him, but I just think that it's just hard for me to imagine Malkin playing anywhere else. And if Crosby's going to ride it out, ride or die, I think Malkin might too. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't think it's wrong to kick any tires on anything, but it's just especially if you're Bill Guerin. But I just I will defer to my colleague who covers them forever and knows Malkin and speaks Russian, and he says there's no way those guys are going anywhere. So I'll say I'm wrong in 3 episodes when it's wrong. But I don't see it
3 episodes. All right, I'm going to mark that. That's perfect. Yeah. No, it really for me, because again, do I think this is happening? No. I think that Malkin and Crosby both retire Penguins, but for me, it's more, I would be really, really shocked if Crosby left. Whereas Malkin, I don't think he can handle losing. I don't think he can stomach it. And they are bad. They are really bad. Does he want to leave? No. But if you tell him he can go to a contender and, all the other caveats I threw out there, I think he entertains it even if he doesn't go. Like he would maybe consider, whereas Crosby's like, no, I'm staying here. I'm going to have statues built.
You think Crosby can stomach losing like more than Malkin can?
I think he's super pissed, but I think he can at least tolerate it. Malkin runs hot so much quicker than Crosby does. Like we've seen Crosby, like he can be a snap show at times, but like Malkin gets real frustrated. And do I think that he can weather it? Sure. But if you're in the midst of them being one of the worst teams in the league and Dubas comes to you and says, hey, Guerin and Fleury want you to come over and hang out, and you get to center Kaprizov and go on a playoff run. Are you interested? Does he say yes? Maybe not. Does he say, I'm going to think on it? I lean yes. That's more where I'm at. I think he is going to get tired of losing real fast because they really haven't done it. Like any year they've missed the playoffs, it's been razor thin. He hasn't been on a bottom feeder like this, and he doesn't. Crosby is the face of the team. Malkin is not. As much as I love Malkin, and I actually like Malkin is my favorite Penguin of this like couple generations that him and Crosby have ushered in. Like I love him. I just don't see him being in the same light for anyone as Sidney Crosby, and that's not a slight to him. That's just like what Crosby meant to this team. So it'll be interesting. I don't know, but will this happen? No. If it does, I'll be really interested, but we don't have to waste much more time on it because it's not going to happen. Let's talk about a team that I do not like. The New York Rangers. First one here that's clearly people don't agree with, but I have to say there's nothing wrong with how the New York Rangers handled the Trouba situation. I'm sorry. I know people want to make it into a bigger thing because he's their captain, but there's been plenty of other players most recently, and I know this one is one that hits close to home for you, Joe. Ryan McDonough, literally getting the exact same treatment to end up in Nashville. I feel for Trouba, and I understand why he wanted to resist being traded because of his family situation, but end of the day, it's a business. He's been bad. They need to move on. He eats up a ton of cap space. Do you have a problem largely? Again, could they have handled things more delicately or been a little nicer about it? Maybe, but the reality is this is the business. Do you think that the Rangers did anything largely wrong here?
I do. I mean, and the McDonough thing too is a perfect example. They played for their 3rd straight Stanley Cup in Tampa. He played with a mangled finger.
Yeah.
2 days later, Julian Brisebois, who I respect a lot as a GM, as a human being, called him in and said, basically, we have no choice. We don't want to. We have to trade you. And then went up that week, and there's gently a chance that be on waivers. If he wasn't accepted trade and he found a way to go to Nashville, but these are negotiated part of contracts, right?
Yeah.
This is not just no trade or no move clauses are part of contracts, and they're bargained, and they're not snuck up on teams. These are teams offer these things so they can get favorable terms on contracts and longer term and get these guys to sign. And so to go on ahead and say, we're going to negate what I offered you, my contract is, because of this. This is not the NFL where contracts aren't guaranteed, right? This is typically they're guaranteed, in other sports, right? And so I just have a problem, and there's a lot of problems with hockey in terms of the CBA and like and revenue sharing, all that stuff like that. But it just like if you sign a person long term, you give them a no move clause, and then by the no move clause, I meant kind of no move, maybe
well,
no
no
move.
trade, no trade, not no move.
No,
If it was no move, they couldn't threaten the waive.
Well, like, yes, I get that, but like, it's still you negotiate in good faith, and you give this guy this term when he could have gotten somewhere else or whatever, and you decide to do that. Like, I know it's business, and I you know, I'm just curious on how it'll be other players who decide in free agency, like, not for me to decide, like.
Right. This is a CBA thing, right? Like this, they got to fix it because like they're well within their rights to threaten to waive the player. It's just like, okay, sounds like we need to get rid of that option altogether, right? Make every no trade and no move.
Won't be able to do that, but I'm just saying, like, if I'm a free agent, gonna sign an 8-year deal with the Rangers long term. Shesterkin signed a long term extension with a no move.
That's my next one.
No move clause. Like, okay, well, no move. You're not going anywhere until 4 years from now when they're.
But they can't do anything because it's a no move. With a no move, they cannot waive you. That's the difference. If it's a no trade, well, no. But the difference is with Trouba and McDonough, they had no trade clauses, not no move clauses. Mm-hmm. So the threat was, if you don't agree to go to this team, which we think is the nice landing spot, we're going to waive you, and you're going to be claimed by Columbus, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas like Shesterkin, that can't happen to.
Well, not everybody gets no move clauses. Right. Not everybody gets new clauses.
No, totally. No, I agree. But that's part of the negotiation. I don't know. Because of what was negotiated, like, I get where you're coming from. Like, I think that the players get done dirty. I think the same thing happens throughout organizations outside of the players themselves. It's a slippery slope, but I get where you're coming from. Like, I respect it. I also have a little bit of a weird spot with the Trouba one because he basically said, yeah, if you trade me to a team that's not on my no trade list this summer, I'm just not going to show up. And that really irked me. I don't respect that when it was within his negotiated no trade, you know?
Well, it's not negotiated. It's negotiated. It's part of the contract. Like, it's
no, I was quoting you saying the negotiated portion, like he negotiated a partial no trade. Yeah. If they're going to trade you to a team that's not on your no trade list, and you say, well, I'm not going to go anyways. Like,
well, yeah, if it's not your own trade list, you have to go. Like, that's one thing versus like, yes, absolutely.
The Shesterkin contract one, Joe, I think that's going to ruin the Rangers. 11.5 for a goalie in this economy. He's a great goalie. That's not the question, but like, it feels like they're going into the Lundqvist era all over again, where they're going to basically waste this great goalie's career not being able to support around him.
Well, the cap's going to go up in theory, as we all think and say, the next couple of years. So, and what would the Rangers be without him? Quite honestly,
they have no choice. I'm not challenging that they shouldn't do the signing. It's more, I just think it's going to hurt them. Like, Drury has no choice. If you let him walk, you're fired. Period.
But like, yeah, well, what's your choice then? Not signing him into a free agency, and like, who are you going to sign?
Yeah,
Cam Talbot at age 40, or what are you gonna do? Like, you know, like
you had to go with Talbot. I love it.
What are you gonna do? Like, I just don't like. He is the Rangers. Like, he's the reason why the last couple of years they've been contenders.
Yeah,
you can tell they're flailing right now. They're making trades. Like, they're traded Trouba, their captain. They're like the last 4 captains are him and McDonough and Callahan and Drury, right?
That sounds right. I don't know if Drury was the one before Callahan, but. It's
three traded and 1 bought out. Like, is that really true?
It's pretty dang close. That sounds about right.
So, like, I'm just saying, like, you know, like, I don't know. What else are you gonna do with the Rangers? Like, you have to go on this guy, right? This is
again, I am not criticizing it because I think Drury had no choice and you had to lock him up because the number was probably only going to go up. I just think it was a no-win situation where letting him walk is worse, but signing him for that, I don't know if they're going to win a cup with him. And that's not his fault. It's just, it's tough to build around a goalie that expensive. Like we talked about it earlier with Gustavsson, like Gustavsson maybe should be viewed as our MVP for how cheap his contract is and him being an elite tier goalie like this. Like, it's insane. But I don't know. Again, it's not a knock on Shesterkin. He's a great goalie. I'm not challenging his abilities. I'm not saying that Drury shouldn't have done it. It's just, I don't think there was a right move here. This was just the least wrong move, and he made it.
And like, goaltending is one of probably the toughest positions to give long-term contracts for, because they're volatile one. And like the Lightning gave Vasilevsky a $9.5 million one. People criticized that in the beginning of it when he was an RFA, right? He won 2 Stanley Cups. He's won a Conn Smythe. He's paid on his investment, and we'll see how he does the rest of his career. But like, that guy, he's proven he's won big games, right?
Totally.
Like, you give him the benefit of the doubt going forward, right? The contract was signed before that happened, right? Of course, but like, he makes $2 million less than Shesterkin will. That's just when you sign it earlier on, like 4 years ago, like, our house cost a lot less 4 years ago than
right
now.
It's like if Guerin had done an 8-year deal with Kaprizov at 11 mil, we'd all be very happy right now.
Yeah, we just got to the airport and said, "Hey, Kirill, you want a Ryan Suter, Zach Parise deal?" Oh, we can't do that. But you want an 8-year deal? Like, of course they would have loved to sign him for. I mean, it's like, you ever watch the movie Air, the Michael Jordan movie.
Oh, the documentary about the shoes.
Yeah, Nike was like the 3rd place shoe company between Converse and Adidas, and they were like, "Oh, well, we get Jordan, we're gonna win." And like, they sold Jordan on the fact that like, "Hey, we're all on you," and they give him a piece of the shoe, right? "Oh, we'll give you a certain percentage," and the character at the end is like the Phil Knight character. Ben Affleck's like, "Oh, what's our biggest sale? $3 million for a shoe? Well, how much is that going to cost? Like $160 million the first year of the shoe. Like, making $1 billion on a shoe for a percentage." But like, if you have that guy, you go in on that guy. And that certainly proved into it. But
no, that's for sure. Well, no, all right, that was a juicy one. Thank you, Barrel Theory, for bringing us again another week of hot takes. Joe, you already mentioned Thursday, Charlie Stramel article drops. Is there anything else you want to tease or promote here for the folks before we sign off?
As far as that'll be the big one this week. I know my colleague Mike Russo has some Utah stories in the works. He'll be there. He's there for this week for the first ever Wild River game against the Utah Hockey Club, potentially known as the Yetis or whatever they called.
Whatever they're going to become.
Eventually, I have the projects I'll be working on when I get back starting Monday. Look out for that. But thanks for following and listening and all that stuff the last several months when I've been up and about. But we'll have a lot of great guests for you the next 3 or so weeks, and we'll hopefully have a lot more starting the new year. But just let us know in the comment section of YouTube or on Twitter, whatever else people you want to hear from, Gophers, Wilds, whoever, and we'll try to get them on and do the best we can.
Absolutely. And just a reminder for everyone, Joe Smith will be back writing for The Athletic. He was not fired. He's in good health, just dealing with a newborn, which anyone that's been through it can certainly empathize. But that'll do it for us here this week. You stay classy, stay to hockey.